In the Western world there is a strong public misconception about the Muslim religion and the Sharia law that governs its followers. Many people view it as a violent religion that calls for extremism and persecutes those who do not follow its teachings to the point. How is it that a religion that preaches peace and tolerance has come to be viewed in such a negative light? The ignorance comes largely as a result of a biased media that reports on behaviors in Muslim countries that most Americans take to be Sharia law. Today, we will be taking a look at and ultimately debunking some of the more common Western misconceptions about Sharia law in hopes of providing a better understanding about it as a whole. To start, it is obviously necessary to define what Sharia law is. In short, Sharia is the entire body of Islamic law. From Arabic, the term literally translates to the way to the water source. It is a wide-ranging body of law and personal rules taken both from the Holy Quran and Hadith, regulating matters of all walks of life. It is meant to serve as the governing principle both within the Muslim world and for Muslims living outside it. Many Westerners are under the impression that death to the infidels is the sort of mentality Muslims hold about non-Muslims. This understanding could not be further from the truth. In reality, Sharia law has always recognized and given respect to the idea of freedom of religion to all faiths. The Quran on the matters reads, "There shall be no compulsion in acceptance of the religion." The right course has become clear from the wrong. So whoever disbelieves in Tagut and believes in Allah has grasped the most trustworthy handhold with no break in it. And Allah is hearing and knowing. Thus the Quran is very clear in the matter. Numerous historical examples exist that back up the idea of an. One such example includes that of Caliph Umar. Upon his conquering of Jerusalem in the 7th century, Umar granted freedom to all religious communities and said that the inhabitants of his city were safe and that their places of worship would never be taken away from them. He even set up courts that were designated to the non-Muslim minorities. Another historical example can be found in the Iberian Peninsula between the 6th and 12th centuries. This era is often referred to as the Golden Age of Judaism in Spain. Despite the fact that Muslims ruled the peninsula at the time, Jews were generally accepted in society and Jewish religious, cultural, and economic life flourished. If you were to ask a Westerner what life for a Muslim woman is like, they would probably describe a woman dressed in a veil from head to toe, or a woman who is treated unjustly as unequal to a man. Much of the misconception comes from Muslim countries such as Saudi Arabia, where laws exist that oppress women from even such basic tasks as driving a car. While it is true that many predominantly Muslim countries, particularly in the Arab world, oppress women in such manners, the same cannot be said about Islamic Sharia law as a whole. The idea that women were unequal to men has its roots in a pre-Islam Arab world. At this time, the birth of a daughter in a family was considered humiliating and infanticide was quite common. However, the birth of Islam and the Quran helped bring about an end to this heinous practice. The Quran touches on the subject reading, "When news is brought to one of them of the birth of a female child, his face darkens, and he is filled with inward grief. With shame does he hide himself from his people, because of the bad news he has had. Shall he retain her on contempt, or bury her in the dust? Ah, what an evil they decide on!" Sharia law gave many human rights back to women, and one hadith even reported the Prophet as saying that women are twin halves of men. Muslim women are free to accept or reject any suitors, and are also given the right to divorce. There is nothing in Sharia that forbids a woman from exiting her house or driving as some Muslim countries do. In regards to education, women are encouraged to seek knowledge, and are even considered to be committing a sin if they do not. It is common practice in many Muslim nations for the hand of someone found guilty of stealing to be publicly amputated. The subject seems as though it is very straightforward given the fact that the Quran touches directly on the subject in a verse which reads, "As for the thief, the male and the female, amputate their hands in recompense for what they committed as a deterrent punishment from Allah. And Allah is exalted in might and wise. But whoever repents after his wrongdoing and reforms, indeed, Allah will turn to him in forgiveness. Indeed, Allah is forgiving and merciful. Thus, it would seem that amputation is clearly permitted if not required. However, the passage provides only a narrow view on the matter. It is important to understand what Sharia teaches in full in regards to stealing. In reality, Sharia law states that, if someone is caught stealing, as a result of hunger, poverty or necessity, their hand should not be amputated. Instead, a thorough investigation must be done as to the circumstances of the theft that caused the individual to steal. If it is found that the individual stole as a result of necessity, then instead of amputation, Sharia law dictates that well-to-do members of the community provide support for the individual. All the same, if a person is found guilty of stealing as a result of greed or other motives, then Sharia very much enforces punishment in the form of amputation. The punishment is held publicly for all to see and to serve as a deterrent to other would-be criminals. Unlike most Western countries, where the rights of the criminal are often held higher than the rights of victims, Sharia is very serious about dealing with those who commit needless crimes. As a result, many Islamic countries have some of the lowest crime rates in the world. Islamic Sharia law is very similar in its teaching to those of the other Abrahamic religions. While many of the punishments and ideas condoned under it seem outdated and in conflict with modern human rights standards, it still in no way fits the violent picture portrayed in the media. As a whole, its laws seek to help people lead a better and more meaningful life. That being said, some of its more strict laws would almost certainly make it incompatible as a political system in a typical Western nation.